Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Batman. So, one thing that I want to tell everybody in the very cryptic like sense is people were to go on and tell us that there's going to be a more detective side of Batman in this movie than there have been in other films before. And so, really, we should have gone on and realized exactly what we were getting into when we were getting into the Batman. I would go on and say that there is very little fighting going on in this film. I really think the only real interesting thing about this movie is like probably the last 10 minutes of it. And like, and credit scenes are just I guess like weirdly have some website to promote, and so really it just like you don't really need an end credit scene really. So for this film, I would probably tell people to probably watch the animated movies The Long Halloween. Like watch those, wait for this movie to eventually come out on HBO Max instead of running to the theater like, oh, I gotta see this movie, because it's not worth it. This is the worst Batman movie I've ever seen. And I've seen Batman and Robins, I've seen animated stuff, cartoons, and all kinds of things. And I would have to say, hands down, there are fan-made movies that feel better than this. And they're probably, like, better... Like, there's parody movies better than this. Better than this film. Oh my god. What did Robert Pattinson have to work out for? You know what, if I would have been Robert Pattinson, I'm like, working out. No. For what? To stand there and just solve things? How much... I want to know to the exact minute how many fight scenes... Like, I should have timed this out, but I didn't. But I was like, I desperately want to figure out how many minutes were, in 3 hours, were taken with fight scenes. And here's one thing that I want to go on and say here, that instead of kind of adding to the Batman of things, it seems like they kind of took a lot of things away. Even though it seems like there was one interesting thing, let's just say, that they technically added to this character. And you'll get what I mean when, like, I go on and I'm looking at you, I'm looking at you, kid, when I say that. Still being very cryptic sensey and talking riddles. But it seems like they took a lot of things away from Batman in this film. And here's where I can go on and kind of have this comparison to say to that. So, we of course, in one Batman Forever scene, we of course have Two-Face, who goes into this place and he's just kind of walking in there, and he has these guns and he's kind of telling everybody like, hey, give me your purses, give me your wallets, give me your everything, give me your watches, give me all this stuff, give me anything, give me loot, give me any valuables, I know you're all rich people. And Two-Face is coming in like his don't stink, and so all of a sudden we have Batman, who is to have this like ceiling window that he comes crashing through, and he makes this big lavish entrance. He's like, hey, I'm Batman, like kind of thing. And so we have the Riddler who turns to Two-Face and tells him, it's like, your entrance was good, his was better. I can't help but just think that a lot within this film. That part of the Batman Forever kind of part, where we have Two-Face who's just walking in, and Batman just crashes through this thing, and he's like, "I'm ready to go. What do you got?" Just that's this film. Again, taking away from Batman instead of adding uh, does not make rational sense within this film. But I get it that maybe they were trying to stick with a maybe more realistic approach for this character. Uh, you know what? Catwoman is a better character than Batman is in this film, and that's like, are they gonna do a Catwoman spinoff? Because it feels like they should out of this movie. Because I was much more fascinated by Selena Kyle in this movie than I was Batman, and it feels like the way they end this with that kind of like Fast and Furious kind of ending between them, between characters, and like. So yeah, we don't have enough Penguin in this movie. In all actuality, uh, really, the Riddler, like we don't really have enough of him either. Like he just kind of becomes this podcaster for the most point, or YouTube video maker, or whatever it is. I don't know. Like that's what we kind of have him as in this movie. Uh, we end up also doing some stupid things with certain characters to kind of give you like, oh man, they're gonna keep us on edge to make us think that certain characters are gonna possibly, like, no one's gonna be able to make it out alive kind of thing of this film, and I'm like, oh, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, so worst Batman movie ever, hands down, just irrelevant. You don't really need to see it. Eventually, if you wanna, you can. Um, but really, it's just 3 hours of just like, come on, just come on, just Batman, just fight somebody, just beat somebody up. Oh, like the last 10 minutes of this movie, I was more intrigued by the last 10 minutes than any other part of this film. Just the rigmarole of that we have to go through. I'm just like, so let's go on into this movie and decipher its riddle that we have to go on and figure out. The one thing that I can like about this movie, and I can say without spoilers, or feel like there's not a spoiler in here, is we don't really have an origin for this character for the 18th, upteenth time. Finally, it really is to just, like, say it's like, okay, they know the origin already. Just skip past that and just say that, like, Batman has been doing this for technically a while, even though he possibly still isn't the greatest at it, and he has to kind of need a little help. So, anyways, let's go on to that double 5-time territory. Let's just go into spoilers. Fox HD Movies is an app that you can go and find where Fox HD Movies will be the logo. The title will say, like, Play 1080p HD Movies. You can download that app, and right now it currently has a bootleg version of Batman, which isn't the cleanest or the best looking. But you can see Batman basically for free. And really, with how this movie kind of plays out, I would recommend a bootleg free version over paying like out of pocket to see this film. Conveniently find a friend or find a thing somewhere to find this movie through HBO Max. I wouldn't buy it when it comes on Blu-ray and DVD unless you just love this movie. I don't know. Some people might love this film. Some people might say it's the best Batman film. Like, some people like the Batman Ben Affleck version. And I'm just like, okay, gravy. Um, but yeah, but with that said, let's just go into this one. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time I get into spoil this movie. There's a jumbled mess of a whole bunch of stuff that I really don't honestly understand in this film. So I'm going to try my best to just freaking figure out a way to just decipher this mess of a film. So, in the very beginning of this film, we don't even like show Batman right away. We kind of have to build up to that. So, in the very beginning of this film, we have a guy with Beanox who's kind of looking on as we see this guy who is playing with his son and having fun as his son is going out trick-or-treating, I'm assuming as some ninja. And so he's like slicing into his dad and they're playing around. And like the guy falls over, he's like, "Oh, you got me," as they go on to Halloween, his kid. So Mayor Don Mitchell Jr. is watching the telly and seeing things aren't going well. All of a sudden he leaves the room for him to have the Riddler in the background watching the mayor. So the mayor comes back, and so all of a sudden we have the Riddler who's smacking this mayor with his carpenter tool, taking him down, taping him up, and we of course have a statement that says "no more lies" kind of stapled upon everybody. And so Lieutenant James Gordon, he's a lieutenant now, he's not Commissioner Gordon. So they're like, I don't know how many times you have to kind of back and forth this with Gordon, where like he's lieutenant and then he gets promoted to commissioner. Like, freaking just make him commissioner. Like, you guys have to just be back and forthing with this character. It's just so stupid at this point. Why this man has to continue to just jumble around with his titles. Just for whatever freaking movie that you need him to just like, oh, he's commissioner in this one. Oh, but we're gonna bust him down again. Whatever. So James Gordon goes on with Batman within this case, and we of course have some of the police were telling Batman, it's like, hey man, you can't make it in here, and Gordon's like, hey, he's with me. So all of a sudden we have one of the officers who's telling Batman, it's like, well, hey, like, it seems like this is your favorite night of the year. Because he's Batman. Anyways, so it seems like there's every single time there's a Riddler, like a big, massive envelope thing, it's always to be addressed to the Batman. Because he's the only one that's going to be able to solve these anyways. No one else is smart enough. So, we're still doing the envelope thing. We're still, like, look at Batman Forever. I don't know how many times we would have it where the Riddler was sending these secret messages to Bruce Wayne. And every single thing would have, like, a number combination. And then eventually it left them with Enigma, Egbert Nigma. Ah! Like, I figured out who the Riddler is. This one's a little bit different this time around. So, we get this card, and so the Riddler thing on it is what happens when a dead man is to lie? Or what happens after what happens after a liar is to die? And Batman is trying to figure it out. Gordon leaves almost kind of like, okay, I think we got everything. Batman goes on and says that the guy is to lie still. Funny enough, this riddle was actually on a trailer, and somebody before the movie even came out had figured out the riddle and solved it. And now, like, everybody's like, oh my god, that guy, like, solved it before this thing even came out. So, like, man, if anybody could have just cracked all this just before, like, give us all the riddles so we can F all this up, because, like, this movie took forever to get out anyways. So, yeah, there's a bunch of, like, deciphers and weird goofy things that they just have to, like, figure things out in this movie. So, when Batman isn't Batman, we have, like, motorcycle Bruce Wayne, weirdly. And so we change Batman from normal Batman to somehow have him, like, be, like, motorcycle Bruce Wayne, who's still wearing the black makeup. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's the one cool thing that they, like, stuck in the movie instead of, like, cleaning it. So it's like Batman Returns all over again, where we had Keaton, who, when he, like, rips off his mask, we see that he, like, took off the makeup, and, like, so we're doing the opposite in this movie, where when Pattinson is Batman, like, you keep the makeup on him. And so that's kind of a cool, unique thing that they did there. There's like, like, I bet he was like, dude, I'm not going to freaking take off this makeup. Are you kidding me? Like, we're going to keep this on. Like, how many more Batman scenes can I do today? Like, I'm not going to take off this. Like, no. How many times am I going to have to take this off? So, Bruce is making his way back, of course, to the Wayne Manor. And so we have Bruce, who's in the Batcave, and we find out that his eye contacts as Batman are to be a thing that he uses to record everything, to note everything, to kind of keep a log of stuff that was to happen that day through these eyes. And Bruce can go on and stop this video at any point in time and get, like, a screenshot of certain things so he can keep certain stuff, like the whole card riddle thing. All of a sudden, Alfred is to come in and just be like, hey, like, we have some accountants that are wanting to talk to you about Wayne Enterprises, because it's getting to that point that, like, these guys are just like, hey, like, we need to talk to you about the finances about Wayne Enterprises because things aren't going that well. And Bruce is turning to Alfred and he's like, hey, I don't care about that. Like, all that matters is me being, like, him basically being Batman. Like, the next, like, basically for him, all he cares about is the next mission. And, like, and so Alfred is telling Bruce, it's like, well, what about your family legacy? It's like you have to preserve their name because it's all that's left of them, Mr. Wayne. Bruce does not give a about Wayne Enterprises. He's never in a board meeting. He's never trying to save this company. If it goes belly up tomorrow, he's just like, well, okay, well, that sucks. Like, I guess I'm just this, just kind of poor guy with a mansion, I guess, because all that's he doesn't matter at all about any of the stuff that he's supposed to go on and see into and finance and whatever. So we also go on and have Bruce realize that there's a in this coding there of course is to be this cipher that they have to go on and figure out. And so eventually once they figure this out, they find out that the decoding thing is to leave them with a word called drive, which Batman is to realize, of course, that the mayor did have a car, and also Batman realized that this guy was missing a thumb. And so Bruce is kind of like putting two and two together. So Batman goes along with Gordon to some parking garage somewhere. And so they go on and find this guy's car, and they find uh, this flash drive that has this like thumb on it, and they're like, okay, all right. So they go on and they realize that there is a thumb imprint that has to be done for them to get this information because it's encoded or encrypted or whatever. So they go on and they decode this thing, and they find out that there is a number of pictures. That, of course, was a showcase that the mayor was possibly having an affair with this girl, and also there is Penguin in the background of these pictures. All of a sudden, Gordon is to realize that every single one of these pictures are all of a sudden consistently going and being sent immediately out to like news reporters and all kinds of things. And like, there's nothing Gordon can do, but he's like, oh my god, like my boss is gonna have my hide for this. There's nothing I can do. So we of course have Batman trying to figure out like who is this girl in this picture. Like, that's all I need to know. But since Penguin is in this picture, now Batman has to go on and find where Penguin is. Because there's a reason why Penguin is working for this mayor. So here's where it gets funny. So we have Batman making his way to Gotham Harbor Iceberg Fish Company, and we also had Batman in the very beginning of this film when Halloween was happening. We had it where Robert Pattinson was making this narration, kind of mentioning how, like, when the bat signal's flashing, like, people are starting to get scared, and there's points in time when Batman's kind of lurking in the shadows, kind of scaring some people, to where we have one guy in this kind of pumpkin mask who is to go on and rob this place, and is all of a sudden like kind of getting scared because he thinks he sees Batman in the shadows, and smashes into this car. And we have a number of these guys that are kind of having these white and black faces that I don't want to say it's like the Joker gang, but like that would really be my only assumption to make here. Like, I don't feel like there's any ties of characters that I could like. This has to just be some random gang with white and black makeup, because I don't think it's Lobo, the Lobo gang. I don't know any reference to what this is, but I'm sure it'll probably be like, oh yeah, it's obviously so and so gang. I'm like, sure, whatever that means. And Batman, I guess, because this white masked or white faced gang is going on and beating some guy, Batman goes through and beats them all up because I guess it's the right thing to do. I guess I probably should have gone on and tried to see if there was any mention about these gang members, but I could not have been bothered to go on and see if there was like a train gang. It's the train gang. And you know what's hilarious? The same guy that was in the train gang is the same guy from Titans who plays Jason Todd. Or no, who plays Tim Drake. I doubt he's going to be Robin in this movie. I doubt it. And if he is, I'll just be like, so, like, are they doing Titans continuity? Huh? I don't know. So, luckily I knew it's the train gang, folks. Like, it freaking matters. But anyways, so Batman is to make his way into Penguin's establishment, because he wants to talk to Penguin. And you know how normally Batman would be like going through some secret vent in an Arkham game, or again through a Batman movie he'd be like crashing down through some window. Batman goes on and knocks on this door and is telling this one guy, hey, you know who I am, right? And they're like, yeah. And so another twin comes out, and both of them are trying to beat up Batman and they can't. And so Batman just walks into a club, continually beating up thugs on his way to just make it in there. But Batman seriously just walks into a club. And I'm like, wow, like we have drastically changed over the years for Batman. Just more realistic, but still, like, he's walking through a club. He's walking through a club. So, the Batman is to go on, and we consistently have Batman who says that he's vengeance in this movie. Like, as if he's Ghost Rider and he's Nicolas Cage. I'm the spirit of vengeance. That's who I am. I'm no longer the Batman. I'm vengeance. Man, does he get like egg on his face by the end of this film. Who are you? I'm vengeance too. I'm also vengeance. Over here. That's me. So they end up calling him like Mr. Vengeance through most of this film. They don't call him the Batman. They're like, well, I guess he's Mr. Vengeance. I know, like, is that his name? Like, do we call him Mr. V? Do we call him V? V for Vendetta? So, Batman and Penguin are having this conversation. And so, all of a sudden, we have Catwoman who is bringing in some drinks and stuff for Penguin. And I'm like, wait a minute. So we have another thing where a Catwoman is technically somehow connected to a villain of this story? Telltale Games? You've outdone yourself. You already knew what was going to happen in this Batman movie before the Batman movie did. Good for you. Because if anybody remembers the one Telltale Batman game, we of course had Selena Kyle working for Two-Face. So if there isn't so many freaking rip-offs from this movie, from any number of things that are just kind of copying and pasting, because Falcone was also in the Telltale games, so it's like, man, whoever wrote this movie was just really creative from stealing from a lot of stuff to just make a film. It's like, wow. And so Batman is just so taken by Selena Kyle. He's like looking at her. He's like who's that? Who's that girl? I gotta figure out who that is. Like, Penguin, whatever. But that woman though. So much so that like Batman is getting nothing from Penguin. So after Batman leaves, because technically Selena Kyle is kind of listening on between this conversation between the two of them. And so we have Batman that is following this girl home and finding out that she is actually tied to the girl that's in those photos. And her name is Anitka. Anitka, I believe. So Kyle or Selena is to go home, and it seems like she's in a romantic relationship, possibly with this girl, because they kiss. And so Batman is to sneak into this girl's apartment and find out that there are final notices, like in their mail. And so he's just like, okay, I'm gonna follow her some more. So Batman changes into Bruce Wayne motorcycle guy and follows Selena Kyle because she's going on some heist. Because she's wearing her black leather with the goofiest freaking Catwoman like hat throughout this whole film. So she doesn't even have a good looking like actual like Catwoman costume as far as headwear goes. It's just like this weird, like goofy, like it's like this hole for a head, and like there's two poking things. It looks so weird. It looks so cheap compared to like. Well, this movie is what it is with the Butcher, but so man, like all this leather and lace, but then just like this goofy little ski mask looking garbage of a hat. Hopefully they up that in sequels to come. Or I would have loved it at the end of this thing if we would have had like Batman who would have chucked like Selena Kyle like, hey, like for helping me out, here's a way better freaking mask that seals your identity a heck of a lot better than what you got going on. So Selena goes and is to make it into this place where there's to be this safe, and she goes on and cracks into this, and we have Batman who's like, "You're really good at that," and so all of a sudden, both Selena and Batman are fighting it out, or Catwoman, because she really doesn't call herself Catwoman in this film, but we have to draw that conclusion. So Batman and Selena are fighting, and they're fighting over some uh, passport. And it's Anitka's passport. And so we're having Batman who's asking Selena, it's like, well, hey, like, why did you come all the way just for this? And Selena was saying, because, like, I'm going to have to pause here for a second. All right. So, I apologize. Yeah, kind of stop what I was doing. So, we find out that it's all a passport. It's for basically Selena Kyle's girlfriend. And so, really, we push on. And so, we later find out that Annika is to have gotten killed by Penguin and his men. They end up finding her body later, while, of course, Penguin is trying to do a job. And so Selena and so we have like both Gordon and we have Batman who are trying to go on and get an audience with Penguin again, and kind of Selena gets in the mix of things and kind of ruins their plans, and then Gordon has to go on and kind of save both Batman and Selena by going on and firing upon these guys. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So since both Batman and Selena are kind of on the same, they're on the same level, and they're both kind of working to the same case. We have Batman that goes on and has Selena work with him. So Batman is to go and give Selena these contact lenses, and has her go into this club. And so Selena's going on and kind of bumping, trying to bump into people, trying to see every single person's face and eyes and whatever. Because Batman is consistently telling Selena, it's like, you have to like give me eye contact. You have to like you have to perfectly like show a person's face perfectly. And we have at one point where the Batman is going on seeing this one officer, and he's like, "Oh my god!" So like this guy is moonlighting as a Penguin enforcer, but he works for GCPD. And Batman knows that because he had broken his nose before. So this guy kind of is showing it. So Selena's going through and meeting a bunch of people. And when the heck does Riddler come back on again? When does this happen? Selena goes and is kind of bumping shoulders with a bunch of people. All of a sudden, we have both Selena and Carmine Falcone, who is played by John Turturro, who a lot of people know him as the guy from the Transformers movies, as that Division 7, whatever goofy guy that had like the Superman logo, and that's Carmine Falcone in this movie. And I'm like, really? Out of all the guys to have been Carmine Falcone? Like, just... But hey, the casting in this movie doesn't really matter. Nobody's bringing anything really creative to the table besides maybe Colin Farrell, maybe as the Penguin. Like with all that makeup and all that rigmarole, you know? So, we have Celine going on and she's talking to Falcone. And Batman is like, you know Falcone? And like on a personal level, and Selena's like, yeah, I know him. It's like, oh, okay. But he wants to know why. And he'll figure that out later. So Selena is realizing that there's a district attorney, Gil Colson, within these people, and he's realizing that they're all taking drugs. And so it's like, hey, like focus on them more, go on and go and be with them, talk with them. So the district attorney is going on and talking about that there is a rat going on in this case with the whole Falcone thing. Like there's a whole rat going on there. So we had it at one point where Batman was going on with these riddles. And the next riddle that the Riddler was to give was that they have to go on and figure out who the rat is. And it's a riddle that is to mention about like a rat with wings. So, because we had it at one point in the news, there was to be this one thing that the Riddler did with this one guy who's being tortured with this rat that was kind of going into this maze. And eventually it all led to rat poisoning. And this one guy ended up getting killed. And so the Batman was with Gordon and kind of figuring out that there is to be some kind of riddle inside this maze. And so they kind of figured that out or deciphered that it has something to do with a rat. And so they're trying to figure that out. Because this whole thing is tied to some case that they're trying to figure this thing out. Like they're trying to figure out the connection. And they're trying to solve this whole thing. So I want to say it's the Maloney case. Is it the Maloney case? Like Falcone and Maloney, it just sounds the same. So we have Selina who's talking to this district attorney, and he's talking about there's a rat in this case, but he isn't saying who. Because this guy is high as a kite, and we can kind of tell he's kind of like... So Selina's asking him about this and getting nowhere. And so Selina goes on and realizes that the girl that this guy's with is kind of running off because it seems like she knows something. Selina goes and runs after her because she realizes that Anitka had gone missing and that Selina might have an answer through this girl about all this. And so the girl doesn't really give much answers. And so when Selina leaves, the district attorney tries to go and tries to get with Selina. And Selina wants nothing to do with this guy. And so the district attorney goes back to his car, and the Riddler's there to go on and kind of tape up his face, smack him a little bit with this carpenter tool, not to death, but knocks him out. Puts a bomb under his neck. Because, of course, we are to have, the mayor's funeral is coming up soon. So we have it, of course, where Bruce is to go as Bruce Wayne to this funeral because he realizes that he probably won't easily kind of fit in there as Batman, so he might as well go as Bruce Wayne. And Alfred's like, hey, you're thinking, all right. So Bruce Wayne goes on to this funeral where all of a sudden he's going to be met by this politician called Bella Real. He meets with her and he's like, well, hey, like, Bella's to say, it's like, well, it seems that I couldn't really get a hold of you. Everyone and your brother was saying that you were busy. So now that I can see that you're here, like, maybe we can talk. So I'm like, man, that's kind of awkward time to like talk at a funeral, like, but I'm sure with Bruce Wayne he probably gets this like all the time because him being rich and all. So this girl is just kind of mentioned that she's kind of running for office, and Bruce Wayne could not give a about this. He's just kind of waiting for something to go down. At one point, we of course have it where Bruce Wayne is kind of bumping shoulders with both Falcone and the Penguin. And of course, Falcone is mentioning about the time that Thomas Wayne had saved Falcone from this almost life ending moment where he was to be shot, and his father had saved him right at home. Which, of course, you can easily see that via the Long Halloween at some point. So we go on here, and we of course have it where there is to be this car that comes driving by into this funeral, and we find out that it's Coulson. He has a bomb strapped to him, and he has a thing of tape that says "No lies" upon his face. And we have another letter just addressed to Batman, because only Batman can solve these whole things. So Bruce Wayne quickly changes to a Batman costume. It is now dealing with this because everyone else is like, they just send like the bomb disposal bot to just try to figure this out. And so Batman is trying to figure out this whole like thing. Batman goes in there and he is to kind of undo this letter, and he of course is to solve this. So because really the whole thing of the newer card is for him to just really answer this phone, and so he does. He answers the phone, and we have the Riddler that is on there again as this kind of Skype call. And the Riddler has kind of been waiting for a while, so he kind of has to kind of walk in there like, hey, like, I guess you're finally here after I've rang I don't know how many times. So, of course, we have it where the Riddler is now telling Coulson within a number of minutes that he has to go on and answer a number of riddles, and if he does, he can be set free. And the goofy thing about this is Coulson really isn't answering the riddles, Batman is. And so the last thing of it is that the Riddler wants Coulson to reveal who the rat is, and Coulson won't, because if he reveals who the rat is of this whole thing, this whole crime, then not only will he die, but probably his family and friends and everybody that he knows and loves, if he tells who exactly that this is. And so all of a sudden, Coulson's bomb goes off, and Batman gets chucked, and he's knocked unconscious. Some police officers are there, kind of waking Batman up. I'm like, how many times within this movie does like Batman somehow or another get like knocked out or some kind of something where we could easily go on and probably take off this guy's cowl and just like, hey, it's Bruce Wayne as Batman, because it feels like the Riddler eventually gets to that at some point in this film because he's smarter than everybody. So now that that whole riddle is done and over with, and Gordon is back in there, because I guess like Batman is just easily go in there, and like everyone else is like, well, after this is all said and done. So we have Batman reflect on the fact that the mayor's son was to find, of course, the mayor's body. And we consistently have Bruce Wayne that's consistently trying to find this kid and look at him. And just keep looking at him. It's just like, you're going to be the next Robin, probably. Is your name Damien? What is your name, kid? Because you're probably going to be mine anyways. You're going to be a Robin at some point. Maybe your name is Jason Todd. That would make a lot of sense. What is the mayor's name? because then I can figure out if he's going to be a Todd or not, or he's going to be a Mitchell. Yeah. Not many Robins have the name Mitchell in it. Maybe he's going to go by his mother's name. I'm not quite sure. We'll figure that out. Anyways, maybe he'll change his name. Whatever. Anyways, so after that moment, we let's fast track this a little. So we, because I like right around this part is kind of when things start to get a little fuzzy, a little hazy, a little midnight daisy or whatever. So Batman is to go on, and there have been a number of people that have died on his watch, technically. And there's some officers that are kind of thinking it's like, well, hey, like Batman should come in as like an attempted murderer because he didn't help this guy out. And so we have kind of Gordon and Batman who are kind of at odds with one another as we have all the other officers leave this precinct or leave the room that they're both in. And Gordon and Batman are kind of talking about things. And so Batman is telling Gordon how this one guy is to be the enforcer for Penguin. And they're kind of giving one another information. And Gordon is telling them, like, hey, like, grab this key from my pocket and punch me in the face. And, like, so you can be saved. And, like, because these guys are going to want your head. And, like, I'm not going to let them do that. And so they kind of keep, like, they look like they're like angrily like talking to one another, and Batman is consistently looking at the officers outside. And so they're giving one another information. And so Batman punches Gordon and then runs off. And Gordon tells Batman later, hey, you should have pulled that punch. And Batman is like, well, I did. It's like, so, like, man, if that's a pulled punch, just imagine how hard the real punches were. So Batman goes off, and now he wants to understand Selina Kyle, because Batman is getting a little suspicious about her. So Batman, of course, asks Selina, like, okay, how are you tied with Falcone? Like, are you, like, you in connection? Were you the rat? Because thinking about it, a cat and a rat, like, makes a lot of sense. So, Selina Kyle is to mention that her mother had of course, a lover at one point. And Batman is just like, okay, go on. Like, who's the lover? Selina Kyle, we end up finding out her biological father is technically Falcone. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a big, massive reveal. And so this girl, I guess, never took the name of Falcone. She kept the name Kyle. And so Selina Kyle is to try to get back with Falcone because there is to be this kind of relationship tie. Because of course, if Selina Kyle is to mention that she is this woman, then of course Falcone is like, yeah, I'm not going to actually tell her that she's my daughter, but really she is. So and we go on and we have like even like Catwoman is wanting to seek some vengeance upon her father later on in this film. So now that Selina and Bruce are to kind of, and Batman are to kind of know this information about one another, we now have Selina that's asking Batman, hey, like, why do you have this mask on? Do you have some, like, permanent scars? And the Batman is like, yeah. So both Selina and both Batman kiss at this point. I'm like, oh, okay, so They've actually kissed in this film. Like, they're not kind of leading it to, like, will they, won't they? Oh, no. But by the way that this movie ends, like, they're not going to have a long term relationship until sequel happens, right? Like, hey, it's been a while, Batman. Can we lip lock again? Unless you're with somebody else. Who else could you be with, Batman? Any photographer is going to be in your eye anytime soon? So we push on into the story, and so at one point we have the Riddler that is to go on to reveal that that about some dark past stuff with uh, with Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne, because we get to where there is another clue that leads to a orphanage that, of course, is to lead them to go on to, of course, this orphanage that was to previously be owned by Thomas Wayne. So all of a sudden we have this big speech of a thing done by Thomas Wayne. And so we have these signs on there that says the sins of the father. Gordon is to realize that Bruce Wayne is going to be the next target. And so all of a sudden Batman is kind of racing back to Wayne Manor, because all of a sudden Alfred is kind of going through the mail. He's like, what's this one package? It says for Bruce's eyes only, but you know what? Like, it's probably going to be mine too. So Alfred opens this package up, realizes that it's a bomb. He tries to chuck the bomb. Bomb goes off. Batman, of course, tries to desperately make a phone call that is to be answered by somebody. And so Bruce is kind of telling this one girl, like, hey, like, did Alfred check the mail kind of thing? And she's like, well, yeah, it's already too late. So we immediately think that Alfred's freaking dead in this movie. And people are ticked. Because really, when it comes down to it, if we haven't had already one other movie where they've kind of teased that Alfred is going to be dead, and a lot of people were just kind of like, that. We turn around and in this movie have another situation where Alfred is to seemingly be dead, but we find out that he's going to possibly make a full recovery. What kind of garbage is that? If you're going to kill Alfred, freaking just kill him off. Like, this is getting ridiculous. Like, Alfred is just, like, he's more resilient than Bruce is at this freaking point. So, we not only have that, but then Bruce is to also find out a bunch of dirty laundry stuff. And so the Riddler is to put out this video mentioning, because, like, he knows more about anybody than anybody really does. So the Riddler is to mention that at some point Martha was to be in an insane asylum numerous times over, because her being pointed out as to have possibly murdered somebody at some point. And we had this news reporter who is trying to get this news story out about Martha, and Thomas Wayne was to do everything under the sun to try to get this reporter to not say anything. And so he had turned to Carmine Falcone to, like, hey, put the fear in God into this guy. And so what happens is Falcone was to kill that reporter, and later on we find out that Thomas Wayne had felt guilty about that, and so he wanted to go to the police with this information, and Falcone had killed both Thomas and Martha while they were going to this movie theater. Not Falcone himself, but like his hands were dirty as much as the next guy. But like Falcone will get his comeuppance by the end of this movie anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So we turn around and have Bruce, not Batman, Bruce, go to Falcone and is going to meet up with him and kind of ask if all of this is true. And Falcone's like, well, yeah, it's all true. But hey, like, don't lose any sleep over that reporter. Like, that guy, that guy was a horrible guy anyways. Like, don't, so yeah. So we find out that that story's all true. And so when Alfred is to be more coherent, Bruce goes after Alfred is like, hey, like, you've lied to me my entire life. Like, about all of this stuff that happened. About my father and how I thought that he was a good man. And Alfred's like, he was a good man. Like, you just don't know it. And plus, Alfred was mentioning that he wasn't really going to be a legitimate father for Bruce. And so, like, there was nowhere for really Bruce to go after Thomas was to die. So, Bruce is to go on, Bruce is to change into Batman and is to go on to deal with some Penguin stuff. Because Bruce needs to go on or Batman needs to go on and talk to Penguin again. And that all of a sudden leads to this operation that's going on. Selina kind of gets into the fold also, and Gordon is kind of having to, like, help out with this whole business. And so all of a sudden we finally see the Batmobile in this movie. A garbage-looking Batmobile that doesn't really look like a... Man, I miss the days of the Tumbler, because at least that vehicle stood out. This Batmobile, like, it's a non-memorable thing. Like, it looks like any car that you could have just found, as well as any number of things. Like, find any actor to be in this movie, and just, like... How is it that it seems that the Batmobile has gotten less and less just better looking over time? Like, this Batmobile just looks like a regular car. There's nothing special about it. Like, how is it that we've gotten to be, like, way more creative in past iterations of Batman than the more current thing, the current product? This Batmobile looks like garbage. All brutal honesty, whatever this garbage is over here, this picture of the Batmobile, what the is this? Garbage is what I tell you. Does, like... So, the Penguin is deciding to get into his vehicle, and so the Batman is now chasing the Penguin, and it's a chase? It's a chase thing in a Batman movie? I'm sorry, like... We had in the way later Arkham games, where we had these kind of side quests that dealt with, like, chasing of cars and stuff, but I would never think that you would do that in a Batman film. He's flying on rooftop. Yeah, that's against the police. Like, I would never want that to actually happen. Like, I guess maybe The Dark Knight, when you had that whole, like, Tumblr and Joker situation with Harvey Dent being in the armored car, but, like, that was actually cool. Like, that was actually interesting. But that still led to there possibly being a interesting, like battle for Bruce to not ram into the Joker. Like, that stuff was cool. And plus also Commissioner Gordon revealing to still be alive and having the advantage on Joker. Spoilers for anybody that hadn't seen Dark Knight. Because You would much rather go back to those films than this. Seems like people are doing that right now by the clicks and stuff that I've seen for a number of other Batman films besides this one. Kind of gearing everybody up to see a better looking Batman film, in all honesty. So, it seems that Penguin is to get into an accident. Batman is to pull Penguin out of this car. And now they're questioning, of course, Penguin again. And this kind of leads to the situation where, of course, a mispronouncing of a Spanish word leads them to kind of figure more things out. And so instead of thinking that it's a penguin, they all of a sudden are to realize that it's a falcon. And so this is where it leads them to the orphanage. This is like where it leads them to Thomas Wayne and all this big la-di-da reveal, so on and so forth. So if there's anything that I have forgotten about at this point, because this Batman movie is just all over the gosh darn place, and I'm all over the place, I'm sorry. This movie is exhausting to talk about because it's not worth even talking about. I'm sorry. This movie is just... it's the crap. This movie is the ploops. The ploops of life. Everybody, if you've gotten to this point, just say ploops in the comments. I'm like, I won't even remember what it is, but I'm like, oh yeah, ploops. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about this movie. Like, if you love this movie for whatever reason, because for any time that I'm to say, like, man, a movie's garbage, somebody out there in the ether of life is to say, no, this is the best Batman movie I've ever seen. It's the greatest thing. Because they haven't gone on and seen every single Batman movie, probably. And this is their only iteration of this character that they've seen. And they're saying that this one's the best one ever, okay? Sure. This Batman barely even has lines. Bruce Wayne doesn't even have lines in this movie. But he's the best one ever? Alright? Like, just wait till he actually has a thing that he has to say besides narrations and whatevers. So, this leads to Falcone being said is to be the rat of all things. After we go on and we of course have Selina, who's beating it out of that broken-nosed guy, revealing, yeah, it definitely was Falcone. And so Selina is making her way to trying to take down Falcone herself by getting out of her leathers and going into a normal dress to try to go after Falcone. And Batman stops her. And we have it where, like, Selina... because there's also this recording going on because Selina is to get this message about Nika getting killed and, like, the background of the sound of it all. So... we, of course, have Selina that's going on and whipping out this gun to go against Falcone. And Batman is telling Selina, it's like, because she's yelling out, it's like, he needs to pay. And the Batman is like, well, you don't need to pay. Like, because if he goes down, you're going to go down too. Basically, with the metaphorical meaning of that. Where it's like, if he dies... like, you go to prison for the rest of your life, so think about that. So, the Batman takes Falcone into handcuffs and brings him down, and that's where you get the Zorro reference. And Falcone is like, hey, don't I owe most of you cops? And Gordon's like, well, not all of us. So... we make our way to have Falcone be taken to jail. All of a sudden, for him to get a sniper shot to the back or a sniper shot to just murder him. And so the Batman is kind of consoling Falcone as he is, of course, die. And he mentioned something about about the lights. Like, is he trying to redeem Falcone in some way? Like, hey, just forgive him and just bring him into heaven, even though he's a murderous guy that has killed a number of people. So they figure it out that it's the Riddler who had killed this guy, and they even quickly go on and figure out who the Riddler is. And so this is some guy at this diner who had ordered this pie. So the Riddler turns around and is to give himself up. And so now the Riddler and Batman are having this meeting together in this prison cell. And so the Riddler is just going on and just saying, like, Bruce Wayne. We don't have a more nails in the chalkboard villain in this movie. We do now. Because we just had this character like Bruce Wayne. Because the Riddler is to easily have figured it out by the orphanage part that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and both Batman and Bruce Wayne are to realize it's like, oh my god, this guy knows. So we have it to where the Riddler is talking to Batman, and we of course have it where they find out that this guy has this video that can't be shown. And so it's like, okay, this is a little weird. So Batman is talking to the Riddler, trying to figure out the passcode, and the Riddler's like, well, shouldn't you have figured it out? Like, oh, come on, like, I guess I'm not, I guess I was kind of underestimating how intelligent you were. And so we consistently have the both of them. We have, like, Batman who's just kind of looking very defeated, and he's just like, well... like, that's what he looks like when he's, like, talking to the Riddler. Is like, well, this sucks. So, the Batman is going back, looking through all the evidence, and the one detective is to mention, like, man, isn't it kind of weird that guy was using some carpenter tool to take down his enemies? Isn't that a little weird? And Batman's like, yeah, it is a little weird. Thanks for pointing out the obvious there, buddy. So Batman is to go on and realize there's a carpet in this evidence room. And so the Batman uses this tool to undo this carpet in the evidence room. And we find out this big, massive clue that, of course, is to lead to Batman figuring out this thing for this computer, typing it in. And all of a sudden we have one more video for the Riddler who's saying that, like, hey, I've planted a number of vans all across Gotham, and so all of a sudden there's going to be this big, massive tidal wave that's going to hit Gotham Square right at this time where there's this political person that's going on and speaking conveniently. So we also have a number of Riddlers, as if this is like the Joker clan or clown or whatever, because the Riddler is to have used these 500 people to persuade them to become Riddlers to help his cause out. I'm like, okay, that is kind of an interesting way to have figured out, like, how to get followers, is to really just go on and just, like, get them through some kind of video thing of sorts. So I'm sure there's a big, massive gap of something that I'm missing any number of places, but I just want to quickly get this, like, as quickly as possible out, without a doubt. Let's go into this. So we're having like a tsunami kind of wave going on into Gotham, and so Batman is quickly making it to Gotham Square. We've rarely ever seen him use like a grappling hook in this movie. Like we get to see him use it like one whole time to make it up these flight of stairs while he's in the police precinct. And he ends up using this one like glider thing that he ends up trying to land on this bus, but instead he like smacks into a number of things and then he falls during around the same certain scenes. So we don't have him like in Batman Begins where he had this like big massive thing of a wing where he's like gliding and he easily just falls. Like we have to show that Batman isn't always successful at what he's doing, even though he's been doing this for 2 years. Like still he's not gonna have this like absurd perfect landing because the Batman has to be more realistic. So we kind of just have to say that Batman at some points just kind of sucks in this film, which is like, okay, so we're saying that this Batman isn't perfect, but we're really just saying that he sucks. Uh, just being honest. Any other Batman would have these like perfect landings and perfect equipment for every scenario and situation, and he wouldn't be walking into a club weirdly. Still seems weird to me. Does make sense. Batman entrance was good. Everyone else's was better. Oh my god. So Batman goes on and is now having to realize that there's a number of Riddlers that's all set up at the square. And so he's going, of course, to try and take them down. Selena Kyle is kind of helping him out with her bizarre whip of things. And so after both Catwoman and Riddler start taking these characters down, we of course lead to Selena and Batman. They're kissing again, and Selena's like, hey, you've done enough. You've done it as much as you can. All of a sudden, Batman is going to take this adrenaline shot to go on and beat another thug up. So we have Gordon and all the we have like detectives that make it here, and they're going and they're kind of tossing the mask of this one Riddler thug, saying like, "Who are you?" And the Riddler guy goes, "I'm Vengeance." And Batman is just like, "Oh, you even took my nickname, huh? I'm Vengeance." It's really just smearing that in the face of Batman. So all of a sudden, we're starting to see like this water coming and filling up this Gotham environment. This place is heavily flooded. It seems like these people should probably be dead by this point of how many numerous electrical devices and all kinds of things are probably in this water. A number of people should be dead at this point. But we of course have Batman that is to go and have this like road flare thing, and that's where the red comes in from the trailers and from the reveals and from all that garbage. The red. Hey, we gotta red everything out. Like that's what we have to do in this weird movie of a thing. So Batman goes on and is to just have a road flare for all the people in Gotham to just follow him out of this water for them to supposedly be saved. The government official is mentioning like, hey, this is an opportunity to rebuild with everything. That really we should go on and like we need like people either outside of Gotham or within Gotham. We need trust back from everybody. We need to know who to trust, and so it's time for us to rebuild. So we have Batman that is continuing to try to save rando people and kind of put them into this thing for them to go off to get hospitalized. And we just see Batman, who just like looks like mudded crap. He's just watching somebody just go off, and he's like, "Yeah, I saved them." So we again have a narration at the end of this film, going on and on and on about all the crap that they have to narrate at the end of this film, which means nonsense to me. So Riddler is to realize that technically he had lost here because he didn't kill everybody in town. All of a sudden, we of course have it where someone is talking to the Riddler. So, in some riddle or in some kind of weird saying, this guy mentions the word clown. I'm like, oh my god, this is like the 80th time that they've gone on and have a different version of Joker now. Like, I guess the Jared Leto Joker wasn't going to be the last swift change of Joker. We're having it with this one. So, we of course have it where the Joker is to say, riddle me this. And I'm like, isn't that Riddler's thing? Not the Joker? What the fuck? So, all of a sudden the Joker has this riddle for the Riddler. And the Riddler answers it and he's like, oh, the answer is a friend. And so I'm like, wait a minute. So in the don't tell me in the next freaking Batman movie we're gonna have a team up between the Joker and the Riddler, because I don't want to see that again. I don't want to see weird podcasting Riddler. I swear, if there's another podcasting Riddler movie, like, I'm gonna be freaking done with this. If they give me a Joker, a much more exciting Batman film, I will be freaking thrilled. If we have a movie where it's wall-to-wall action, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is cray-cray, then you have me hooked. Anything that's not this movie would be a well-welcomed freaking happiness upon my life. But, like, this movie was just, like, once we got to the last 60 minutes, I was like, my god, let's just get this freaking over and done with. There really isn't a worthwhile end credit scene besides just telling you that the Riddler is possibly coming back in another fucking movie. You for bringing this Riddler into our lives, this S&M freaking Riddler that I don't give a about, and they're gonna, like, are they just gonna keep chucking this guy inside of our lives? I don't know. Do not give me another one of these kinds of films. Do something drastically different. There was not enough action in this movie. There was not enough for me to care about this film, and you killed people off like Falcone, and Penguin is probably going to be in jail now because he was to want to try and kill Falcone, and he didn't get to kill Falcone, but the Riddler did. So the Penguin's in jail. What are you going to do next? Scarecrow for the 18th time? What else do you got left in the arsenal of just rogues gallery that they can go on and, like, have something original be done here? I'm hoping Man-Bat or Clayface. Those would be some interesting characters to add into here. I do not want to see another Joker movie. I think we've done that twice now. Like, we've done that twice. Like, any movie that's just gonna be a Joker focused movie is not a movie I want. Because, like, I'm immediately just gonna be like, dude, like, the other films did it better. 2 movies would showcase to you, well, technically, I liked the Suicide Squad also, so 3 movies gave me a good Joker. Or a Joker that I could like. The Birds of Prey could have actually had a Joker in that movie, and I would have been happy about that. But no, they have to squash my dream, and then there wasn't a Suicide Squad 2 that was an actual sequel, so no Joker in that one either. Anyways, so yeah, if I don't want another Joker movie. Joker has been done way too much through a number of things. Please give me something more interesting. Please just give me something that I could just like. Okay, at least we got something different from these films. Because I would love a Man-Bat or a Clayface that would seem like you're actually using a CGI budget. But, like, what am I talking about for a Brothers movie? Like, their CGI stuff is a joke. Just look at Wonder Woman 84 if you ever were to really want to watch that movie. Like, they can't do a CGI'd villain, or they can't do really much of CGI unless you go on and watch Aquaman. And you're actually impressed by that movie because I like Aquaman. So, in more recent run of things, like I would still have to say that I think Aquaman is probably better than in more recent stuff. As far as DC, it's either Man of Steel or it's Aquaman, and everybody else, every other movie is just there and exists. And eventually, I want to say at some point that I'm probably tempted to rewatch this movie because there's a bunch of billion other things that I probably forgot about. Or I didn't see this movie all that well because this was a bootleg version that wasn't all that, like, good. And so, like, I want to see a cleaner version of this movie to just be like, oh, okay, so, like, maybe there is something okay about this movie, but I can't help but think that I'm like, this this is not a movie. It's just garbage. It's not even a mess. Like, a mess would be like I can pull apart and just be like, I like this. This movie altogether is just garbage. And I can't like want to just diminish this movie more. But I'm thinking at one point, if I were to watch this later on in life, I would probably have a much more optimistic way of looking about this film, but that isn't going to happen right now. Uh, it might depend, and if it comes and has a spectacular sequel, or possibly third installment somewhere down the road. So I feel like I'm going to have to review those regardless. Because these movies are going to possibly be a thing that exists. People want to know how people feel about them. I apologize if you love this movie, if it's your favorite Batman film, and I'm desecrating it by having a horrible opinion. And some people are... I will be surprised if somebody just goes on as a non-joke and is to seriously say, like, I don't think you understood this movie. I think it's a way, like, it's the best film. I don't know what you're talking. You just hate these DC movies. That's probably true. But, like, I can't not, like, say that this movie was like, a great film when it was really just a boring film and a thing that is carried by side characters instead of carried by Batman himself. Because Batman barely ever says anything in this movie. Barely is even really... Like, there's parts where, like, Catwoman is carrying this film more than Batman is. Catwoman's doing more things than Batman is, and I don't give a about COVIDs or, like, actor-director disagreements. I don't give a I don't care about any of that. I don't, like... Really, they should have gone on and gave us, like, an amazing film regardless of anything that was to come out of this movie. Like, if it would have took 5 years to put together this film, that's what it would have taken to give us this brilliant movie that we're like, oh my god, Christian Bale, who? Batman Begins, what? The Dark Knight, Distant Memory from now this masterpiece? Because how long has it been since we had a Batman solo film? And it seems like they've been working on this for a long time. To just toss this out there is just redonkulous. So I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.